This video will show you how to replace the master cylinder on a Toyota Matrix. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Now the first thing we have to do is remove as much brake fluid from inside of our master cylinder as possible. Prior to opening this up, I always just like to give it a quick wipe. We can open our cap. Now typically you would use a fluid extractor device to remove as much fluid as possible. On this particular master cylinder, you can't make your way past the neck. So with that said, let's make our way all the way down to the bottom of the master cylinder. There's a small drain plug. For this, we'll be using a 10 millimeter. Of course, we do have a collection receptacle under this area so we can collect and recycle all brake fluid properly. Go ahead and let that drain into your collection receptacle and then we'll continue on. Now obviously you can wait as long as necessary to remove as much fluid as possible. Typically I like to just go ahead and reinstall that drain plug just so we don't have any leak while we continue on, just in case there's any residual brake fluid. Now we're not removing our lines yet, but it's a good idea to use some penetrant on each one of them. Now we can continue on with our level sensor wiring harness. You can see it back along this area. It does have a locking tab. I'm going to press that in. I can use my pry bar for this. Typically you can do it by hand. Just pressing up against the tab makes it a little easier this way. A quick inspection for corrosion, of course. This looks good, so we can set it aside. We're moving along to our brake lines next. We can see one of them out in the open along the front. The other one's right in this area over here. Now for either of these brake lines, we're going to be using a 10 millimeter to loosen the line fitting. You may find that the line itself is going to twist as you're attempting to loosen these. You want to be extremely careful not to cause any damage to your brake lines. Now that I have that broken free with my line wrench, I can switch to an open end wrench. I shouldn't have to worry about it stripping anything here. A thorough inspection of each one of our brake lines and fittings as we continue on. If anything looks like it's damaged, rotted, or weak in any way, you're going to want to replace it. This looks fine, so we'll continue on to our next line. As I move to this line, I'm just going to maneuver the first line out of my way so I can easily gain access to this. We're breaking it free with our 10 millimeter line wrench, just as before. And try to work in that penetrant. I have that broken free. I'm going to switch to my open end wrench just as before. Now that I have the line loose up against the master cylinder, go ahead and follow the line down to the junction block down in this area. It's not very far away. We're using our 10 millimeter and we're going to loosen this fitting. You should not have to fully remove the line from that junction block. We have a lot of rust on ours. It's fairly common. Now we still can't pull the line out of the master cylinder, but it will slide out as we start removing the master cylinder from the brake booster. So that's what we're doing next. As far as the brake booster, we want to pay attention to the mounting hardware holding our master cylinder to it. Now you're going to find along either side you have a 12 millimeter nut, but on the inboard side, closest to the engine where the junction block is, you're going to have a small metal bracket that leads up to your vacuum line. This leads to the brake booster and it needs to be in place during the installation. So once we remove the nut, we can remove that bracket and then we can also dislodge this junction block. After that, we're moving over to the other side of the master cylinder. On the other side, it's just a 12 millimeter nut that we're going to have to deal with. I'm using an angled pick for my small bracket here. Pull that off of there. Now I'm going to go for the bracket that's holding my junction block in place. Slide that right off of there. Just reach down in here, we can dislodge that brake line. Let's make our way over to the other side of the master cylinder. Now we can take hold of that master cylinder. We're going to carefully slide it forward away from our brake booster and the mounting studs. We can remove it from the vehicle. You can use a pry bar if necessary. There it is, friend. Of course, prior to installation of any brand new part, we need to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. Let's focus on our brake booster. Now for this, paying attention to the brake booster, obviously we need to pay attention to the mounting point for our master cylinder. But one of the most important things is actually looking deep inside that brake booster. We can see the spring. You want to make sure there's no fluid inside of this brake booster. It's common if you have an issue with that master cylinder. If that is the case, you need to remove as much brake fluid as possible, and you may have to replace your brake booster. I don't see any fluid inside this brake booster, which is a really great sign. I don't have to worry about anything with that. We'll just make sure we clean this down as well as possible. We'll continue on with our installation. Now let's prepare to install our brand new master cylinder. Now for this, we want to pay attention at the inboard side. We have our rubber sealing ring. I've already coated this with some lubricant. We also have our master cylinder plunger here. Now if you were to look in the center of it, you're going to find that it is hollow. And if you were looking in the center of your brake booster, deep inside this area, you can see the plunger rod. That rod needs to fit directly in the center of our master cylinder plunger. As we start bringing this into position, we need to make sure we're aligned with each of our mounting studs. We're going to start on the driver's side mounting hardware and snug it up, but we're leaving the passenger side or the inboard side apart. We'll start bringing this down in here. Just flex that junction block out of our way. We're pressing this in towards our brake booster. Let's install our 12mm headed mounting nut on the driver's side flange here. Now we will be torquing this, but we're going to do that once we have the other side in place as well. We're not doing that yet. The next thing we need to do is prepare to bench bleed our master cylinder. To do this, we're going to have a small piece of brake line with a fitting that fits into the master cylinder port. We need to make sure the brake line's long enough to go from the port all the way up into the master cylinder reservoir. We need to go at least down into this area here. Go ahead and start that in. I'm going to remove my cap. Inside of the master cylinder reservoir, typically you're going to find a small screen. You should be able to carefully lift that up and out of position. We're going to flex that line so it's down inside the master cylinder. You can see it right down in here. Make sure that's tight. Now we have our next brake line. Same thing here. Just go ahead and start it in. We'll make sure the line's long enough to make its way down inside that master cylinder reservoir as it needs to be. You can flex it. Make sure that fitting's tight as well. Let's go ahead and top off the master cylinder reservoir with some clean .3 brake fluid. The end of the brake lines need to be submerged in our brake fluid. Now I'm inside the passenger compartment and I'm going to pump the brake pedal. I'm going to do this slowly. As I press down, it's going to start forcing fluid through that master cylinder up through the lines, and then the fluid and air from in the master cylinder will be making its way into the reservoir. We need to continue this process until we only see fluid with no air bubbles. Top off the master cylinder as required. Now at this point, I've pumped the brake pedal several times, and I can tell that there's only fluid making its way through those lines. I do not see any air bubbles. We can pause inside the passenger compartment. We'll continue on with carefully removing our lines. Now here's where it may get a little bit messy. We're going to start pulling our lines up and out of the master cylinder reservoir. Once you have them out of the reservoir, we'll start dislodging the rearward line closest to the booster. Fluid will be making its way out of this area throughout this entire process until we get the brake line back in place. Of course, we have our collection receptacle under this area still, and hand and eye protection. Now I'm attempting to align my brake line with the master cylinder while everything's still loose here. Let's just check it real quick here. Okay, right there's bottomed out. Let's make sure that's nice and snug. We don't want to have a brake fluid leak from this area. Let's continue on to the other brake line fitting in this area as well. Now before we continue on to the next brake line fitting, let's make sure we reinstall our small bracket on this area leading up to our vacuum line, and we also install our mounting nut. Once we have the bracket in the proper placement, we can tighten that fitting. Now we can make our way to that brake line. We already have the bracket secured. Make sure that's tight as well. We don't want any brake fluid leaks from this area. Now we're on to our next brake line. Now, just like before, I had mentioned that you're supposed to typically start these in by hand, so you're sure they're not cross-threading into the wrong positioning. Both of our fittings are stiff on the line. It's hard to turn by hand, so I'm just carefully using a wrench. We're getting this lined up, taking our time here. Okay, there's bottomed out. Just make sure that's nice and tight. Let's go ahead and clean down any brake fluid from this area prior to continuing on. Now we know for sure that our cap is on the master cylinder. We don't have to worry about anything making its way in. We're paying special attention along each one of our brake lines to confirm we do not have any brake fluid leaks in this area. If you were to look all the way down at the bottom of the master cylinder, we have a drain plug. Let's just make sure that's nice and tight. We don't want to have a leak from this area. Let's move along to torquing the master cylinder in place to that brake booster. We're going to be torquing the mounting nuts to 9 foot-pounds. After that, continue on to your level sensor. Just go ahead and line up your electrical connector, press it in, and listen for a click. Go ahead and remove your master cylinder cap. Now we can install our screen. Let's just make sure we top off that master cylinder once again. We're going up to our maximum line here so we can prepare to bleed our brakes. Reinstall that cap. Now that we have the master cylinder topped off, we're going to start bleeding our brakes. We have to remove each and every one of our wheels. We're going to start at the passenger side rear wheel. Once you've bled that wheel, you're going to go to the driver's side front. After you've completed that, stop up at the master cylinder and make sure you top it off up to the maximum line again. After you've completed that, you're going to the driver's side rear, and then you're ending at the passenger side front. Once you've completed bleeding all of the brakes, you need to make sure you top off that master cylinder the last time. We're at the passenger side rear. We're going to start our bleeding process. If you have a bleeder screw cover, just go ahead and remove that now. We're going to be using a 10mm for our bleeder screw. Now I have a second person inside of the vehicle, and they're going to help me bleed the brakes. The person inside of the vehicle is going to pump up the brake pedal approximately 3 to 5 times and hold it. While they're holding it, I'm going to open up my bleeder screw. We're watching to see a steady trickle of clean fluid making its way out with no air. I got my tool on here. Got my hose. Go ahead and pump, please. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. Now, as you can tell, we did this several times, and I had only clean fluid making its way out, definitely no air bubbles. I'm sure that I've removed all the air from in my braking system on this side of the vehicle. Now, as I mentioned before, we need to go to the driver's side front. We're going to repeat the bleeding process. After that, we have to make our way to that master cylinder. Let's go ahead and clean up our mess in this area real quick, reinstall our bleeder screw cover. We want to make sure this is clean so we can double check for brake fluid leaks when we're done this process. Now we're at the driver's side front. I've got my 8mm for my bleeder screw. Let's go ahead and repeat the process here. Go ahead and pump, please. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. Perfect. You can release. Thank you. Now, as you saw, clean brake fluid making its way out. Definitely no air bubbles. We'll clean our mess. We're making our way to that master cylinder to top it off. This bleeder screw did not have a bleeder screw cover, so I won't be installing one here. We'll open our master cylinder cap here, top it off with our clean .3 brake fluid. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, the sequence continuing on from here will next be we're moving to the driver's side rear. After you've bled that wheel cylinder along the backside, you're going to the passenger side front. Go ahead and bleed that caliper as well. After that, you need to make sure you top off the master cylinder one more time. I'm going to do that next, and we'll continue with that master cylinder. I finished bleeding those brakes, so now I'm back at the master cylinder. As you can tell, my fluid is a little low here. You know what to do. Clean .3 brake fluid. Let's top it off. We have our maximum line. The level looks perfect here. Reinstall the cap. Make sure it's properly secured so no moisture or debris make its way inside your braking system. We're just going to clean any mess from this area. Okay, friend, we finished bleeding our brakes and we fully topped off the master cylinder. Just double check to make sure you've cleaned any mess. You're going to torque each one of the wheel lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds. After that, just pump up the brake pedal. You want to confirm it's still firm and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.